Hi, my name is Mike. Today I'll be covering the Thomas Indian School. And if you're watching this, you're probably going to end up teaching a lesson on the Thomas Indian School or Native American history in New York State. The Thomas Indian School is located in Irvine, New York, which is about 30 miles south of Buffalo. It was the only state-run Indian boarding school. So, what we'll cover, New York State Social Studies Standards 11.4c, which mentions forced acculturation efforts on Native Americans. And New York State Standards mentions the Carlisle Indian School, which is in Pennsylvania. Since Thomas Indian School is in New York State and we do abide by New York State standards, I decided to add the Thomas Indian School and give this presentation to you all, along with the resources and activities that I've created. Additionally, there's SEL standards and CRS standards that are highlighted within this lesson. So this information is extremely sensitive, and you need to assist your students with learning this material, but offering them support in addition. So this is broken down into 3 parts: part 1, part 2, and part 3. I'm going to link them all together on my Google Slides, so you'll be able to access everything in one shot. With that, when you go down, there's resources for teachers and students. So these are the resources you can draw off of along with your students. Then I have recommended resources for teachers. The main resource that you should at least have knowledge of as a teacher, this book right here. This is the Thomas Indian School and the Irredeemable Children of New York by Keith Birch. I referenced this book a lot within this presentation, along with numerous other sources. And as teachers, I know it's extremely busy, so I have a summary of all these chapters for you to use. Additionally, there's requests. So per part, I either request a counselor support when you do teach this lesson to your students, and the class setup is done in such a way where it'll offer peer support in addition. Again, I mentioned, so you'll see when you're going down, book overview for teachers. So it's just a quick highlight. So it may be able to prevent you from reading this book. But again, if you can read this book, it's pretty unbelievable, to be honest with you. I didn't realize when I first learned about Indian boarding schools, the significance and just to be quite frank with you, the type of maltreatment that these children had to endure. It's pretty despicable. That said, activity 1, which is part 1, teacher activity 1. Basically, you're going to write. Teachers are going to actually demonstrate empathy for unique lived experiences of others and differing perspectives. I want to know how you'd incorporate CRS standards by identifying inclusive curriculum and assessment, and highlight resources written and developed by traditionally marginalized voices that offer diverse perspectives on race, culture, language, gender, and sexual identity, ability, religion, nationality, migrant refugee status, socioeconomic status, housing status, and other identities traditionally silenced or omitted from curriculum. How will you explain the content in part 1 to your students following the SEL? So for teachers, you should practice what your students are going to do. So it would be advantageous if you would write how you're going to address these standards within your presentation. So next part. Here is the student activity 1. As you can see, there's questions formulated. This is based off the book. Questions that the students will answer. They can do it in a collaborative form. Here we go. Going through here. Now we have, this is teacher activity 2. Teachers will use the circular sharing method, such as that, with peers to mimic student participation to act as a dry run for student class instruction. Using the circular sharing method will set the stage and processes for parts 1 and 3 and allow students to express their thoughts and emotions together for peer support during the presentation of sensitive content. The teacher must emphasize that each student has a voice and all comments and opinions will be respected. The voices of all students and the different makeup of students in your class will meet New York State CRS standards, addressing the traditionally marginalized voices that offer perspectives on race, culture, language, and religion, while the content and student collaboration will meet SEL 2 Alpha, point 5 Alpha, demonstrating empathy for unique lived experiences of others and their differing perspectives. Additionally, the teacher will drive the conversation by asking students what they think about the information covered in Part 1, resources, and gear questions to Part 1, students' activities 1 and 2. So, here you go. You have your teacher on the outside, and you have students sitting on the inside of the circle. So, basically in a circle. Again, so they can see each other. You can see everything from the outside. And as far as asking these questions, the highly sensitive questions, it'll allow them to, at least feel like they're surrounded by their peers for social emotional support. So this is Part 1, student activity 2. Again, it's matching from the book. I have it covers like Dr. Lake all the way to William Letchworth. So basically in the beginning of the school, Dr. Lake was the doctor for the Senecas. And he actually, because Thomas was state run, he had more pull than his counterparts on the federal side, meaning he was able to lobby for proper medical care and facilities, unlike his federal counterparts, because they'd actually get fired. Okay, so then we're going to go to Part 2. So here we go. I just got to get here. So Thomas Indian School Part 2. Again, same standards, same SEL and same CRS. But with this, we have a couple videos. There's 3 parts to this video, and it explains about the Thomas Indian School, and it's titled Unseen Tears, Part 1, 2, and 3. So these are stories of survivors of the last part when it closed in the 50s of Thomas Indian School. And they describe what type of effect it had on their lives. And all the hatred and all of the, we'll say, unfortunate incidents that happened to these children at that time. Again, there's recommended resources for teachers, and then a request, the ability to talk with peers about the content due to sensitive nature and content of the content. This part, you're probably going to want to create permission slips for parents because of the, frankly, it's the highly sensitive nature of this particular part, because this goes into all the abuse that occurred to these students in the presence of a counselor. Okay, so activity 2. So as teachers, you'll watch all 3 recommended sources, meaning the videos, with colleagues mimicking what your students will be doing during class. And I'll just show you this right here. So this is how I would set it up, the table. 5 tables with 5 students at each table, totaling 25 students will be present at the lesson. So obviously if you have an odd number, you just switch that up. This is important because when students view Part 2 of the video, for students, and this is the conclusive part of the lesson for students anyway. So 4 students will get up and they'll replace 4 different students at other tables. So essentially students that don't normally sit together will actually sit together. This will ensure students who do not usually sit with each other have an opportunity to sit with someone else new, like I said. And then keep SEL 2 Bravo point 5B in mind. Students should ask 5 questions about the videos, watch as they should collaborate with each other, and present their collective answers. So they're going to work together and then present 1 answer per table to the teacher for open discussion. Also, you should also collectively brainstorm as a class to figure out what can be done as a class to advocate for the well-being and rights of former students at the Thomas Indian School. So this is important. A simple student discussion with family about what they've learned at Thomas would suffice. Spread the word. But again, as teachers, and I should have covered this in the beginning, the reason why I'm doing this is because I would like more students to learn about the Thomas Indian School. And as teachers, please, by all means, use this, expand it, make it a better product. And maybe one day the state will mandate the study of Thomas Indian School. Okay, so with the videos watched, there's formulated questions for the students. So just give me an example. First question regarding Little Indian Boy, which was a song about killing Indians, is pretty horrendous. In the beginning of the video, these kids are singing. The Native American kids are actually singing the song. They were forced to. What did you think about the song Native children were forced to sing in the beginning of the movie? So, like I said, it's pretty emotional. It's pretty upsetting, to be honest with you. And I'm upset with myself I didn't know about this stuff. But again, that's why I'm doing this video, because I'm telling you all about it. So there's five different questions. So this was a guy by the name of Elliot. He was interviewed. So at 7 minutes and 4 seconds in the movie, Elliot talks about getting his mouth washed out with soap for speaking native language. And at 7 minutes and 42 seconds, Sally talked about being locked in a dark press room with her friend Rosemary, being told that rats would get them and not knowing what they did. Well, eventually she figured it out when she was older. Sally eventually figured out they were being punished for not knowing English. So basically, these kids were brought to Thomas from their reservation for numerous reasons, and they were forced to speak English, although they couldn't speak English. And pretty horrendous. And then I say talk with other students at your table to describe how you feel about the treatment these children went through, and if something similar could happen today in the United States. So it'll allow for good discussion in your classroom. So, part 2, activity 2, this is for teachers. So you read the article, it's on JSTOR, titled How Are Native Americans Represented in Social Studies Curriculum? For an additional reminder of how Native American depictions in society demonstrate the lack of accurate taught curriculum. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Information we learned when we were kids is not highly accurate. But then it says here, additionally, mental health and generational damage caused by Indian boarding schools, like the Thomas Indian School, can still be seen today, when root causes of poverty and alcoholism are traced back to the focal source. Then keep in mind, with the article you read, the next activity will highlight the middle and towards the end of the portion of Keith Birch's book. So we will revisit the people who perpetrated abuses against these children at Thomas Indian School, such as the superintendent, John Brennan, and the type of tactics used against the children. Again, keep your SEL benchmarks in mind. And creating the activity will incorporate SEL benchmarks and will present content-specific facts and ask students if they agree, disagree, and ask for feedback in teacher-led class debate after every question, followed by student sticky placement on the board, meaning the word wall. So they're going to have stickies, red and blue, and they're going to place it on the wall. And so these are the teacher directions right here. If you go down, So word wall, the class board is in front of the classroom, obviously. 5 students per table, all facing the class board. Students will be handed a stack of blue and red stickies. Blue stickies represent agree with the statement. Red stickies represent disagree with the statement. You will, as a teacher, will lecture chapters 5 and 6 of Keith Birch's book. The school counselor will assist you with this lesson. The teacher provided questions students will respond to. So you're going to provide them questions and they'll respond to it. Student directions will be explained by the teacher. Student directions, students will place a blue or red sticky under the description. And then teacher-led short discussion for each sticky place per question. So it's going to kind of look like that. So there's the board right here. This is the board, and here's the tables. So essentially, you're going to have these the questions that are identified below, if you're following me on Google Slides, and they'll either agree or disagree, and then they'll all come at the same time and put, if they agree, it'll be a blue sticky. If they disagree, it'll be red. So here's one question that they're going to respond to. John Brennan, superintendent at Thomas Indian School. When the school switched from education to acculturation and simulation, entity, insulated children from the destructive influences on the reservation. Supposedly they did. This required the school to bring the children in at younger ages and often prohibit family contact with the children. So pretty much when the parents brought these kids to the school, it's pretty much signing over the rights. That's what the parents thought anyway. And the school proceeded with that misperception. Children sometimes stayed past their teenage years. So with half education and half work days, so basically students would work they'd go to school half days and they would work on the farm if they're males and do sewing if they're females. And part of the reason for that is, training, but they were being trained technically as laborers, but to grow food for the school and actually create a surplus so they can actually sell to get money for the school. So with that, they were worked hard, and these intensive labor tasks Native children were forced to conduct was not common practice among non-white children. So the white children were not doing this labor-intensive work. So if you go over here, the question, sticky on the wall board, and here's the question. Considering the destructive nature of the influences on the reservations, was it justified for the administration, meaning the school administration at Thomas Indian School, to keep the parents and family away from the children, considering the damaging effects it may have had on both the children and family? So you would ask that question, or you would have it up on your board, and then they would either bring up a blue or red sticky, yes or no. And then with that, you're going to have a discussion. So students' written thoughts for a teacher-led class discussion. So you're going to discuss this with them. There is 5 different questions. Let's see here. We will go to just one more. So chapter 5 talks about the chronically underfunded reservation schools, not including Thomas, we're talking, but the other reservation schools, compared to public schools at the times. The distances Native children had to walk to their school was a distance for the children. Some students at the Thomas Indian School were thankful, and it was an upgrade from where they came from. The Thomas Indian School offered amenities reservation schools could not offer, such as medical and athletic opportunities. However, there was minimal to no parent oversight. So with that question, with that fact, the question would be to your students: although some Native children felt appreciative for being a resident and student at the Thomas Indian School, where they had food, medical care, and availability for athletics compared to the reservation schools, which cannot provide much of that, What do you think about the lack of parental oversight that was required by the school? And I want to emphasize required. So your students would come up, they would put their sticky, and then you would gauge their thoughts, and then you guys would have a conversation about that. Okay, so going through here, I've got all the references you can look at and draw from. So now we go to part 3, which is extremely interesting. Again, it's the same standard 11.4C, and then SEL is 2 alpha, 0.5 alpha, demonstrate empathy for unique lived experiences of others of different perspectives. Again, we have our CRS standards. Here we go, teacher resources. The Thomas Indian School and their Irredeemable Children in New York State, of New York, not New York State, Chapter 7. And then we have a news article from WGRZ, and it explains about the tragedy. It's a local news station, I believe, out of Buffalo. Then we have an article from Congressman Higgins out of Buffalo, and commenting on the U.S. Department of Interior's investigation on Indian boarding schools. And the Thomas Indian School was included in that investigation. So, and there was 3 schools total in the Buffalo area. Reason why Thomas was included, although it's a state-funded school, Thomas did receive federal funds. So they were part of this 2001 investigation of Indian boarding schools. And then this gets really interesting. Did any of you realize that there was an official apology to Native Americans by our government for the maltreatment? I had no clue. However, HR 3326, hidden in the Department of Defense Appropriations Act of 2010, actually 2009 2010, of the 111th Congress. We're going to go over that, and we're going to talk about some legalities too, in addition to that. And again, you should request a counselor for this portion. So here's the directions. In this final section, we'll use Chapter 7 to explain to our students the ill feelings of survivors and the injustices they endured. Counselor should walk around at this point, obviously with you as a teacher. Content, students will next watch the WGRZ news story and the Thomas Indian School. It'll give a first-person perspective on the experiences at Thomas. So that's attached to these Google Slides that you're viewing, that you will be viewing, hopefully. Teacher directions. Students will use the video for additional content knowledge on the Thomas Indian School. Students will write down what is said, and this is important, during the video time frames of 7 minutes, 12 seconds and 7 minutes, 17 seconds for a turn and talk portion. And here's this: New York State has never taken responsibility for what happened at Thomas Indian School, nor has the state issued an apology. Okay, for the teachers, you're going to read this article by written about Congressman Higgins to the class. It's a short article recognizing U.S. Department of Interior Secretary Deb Haaland for releasing an investigation on 3 Indian schools in Western New York. One was Thomas. For teachers, students will use the information from this article for background knowledge about government actions that were previously taken. I believe in 2001, trying to make amends from past injustice perpetrated by school officials and the federal government's role in it, in addition to the state. Course description. Okay. The final part of this activity will require students to read in groups. So we're going to read in groups at their tables. We have another table set up. They're going to read the Department of Defense Appropriations Act. It's maybe a page at most. And just the portions listed are the relevant ones. from Congress, 2009, 2010. It's section 8113. So you might want to pull that up too. Students will analyze 8.8113 and conduct a talk and turn exercise at their table with other students, keeping in mind the last portion, as I mentioned, of the news story, 7.12 to 7.17, when it was stated that New York State has never taken responsibility for what happened, nor has the state issued an apology. Okay. Here we go. Here's student activity 1. Directions. Students will sit at the table, 4 per table. Teacher will notify students of the presence of the school counselor. Students will listen to the teacher's summary. So you give a summary of chapter 7, which explains the ill feelings endured and injustices endured at the Thomas Indian School. And you'll talk about the annual gathering on every third Saturday of every September as the survivors come back from all around the nation and they talk about their experiences. Students will next watch the news story on WGRZ about the Thomas Indian School. Again, it'll give a first-person perspective. It's 2022. Teachers will read the student short 2022 article, not 2021, 2022, about Congressman Higgins recognizing the Department of Interior's investigation and on the abuses that occurred. This information will give students background knowledge regarding current initiatives of the federal government to acknowledge wrongdoings and past aggressions against Native American children at the Thomas Indian School. Last part, students will read with a partner at their table the Department of Appropriations Act, titled Apology to Native American People in the United States. Students will analyze the text with their partner using a talk and turn strategy, then discuss their analysis with other groups at their table for a consensus meaning of the content. So basically, there are 2 groups of 2 per table. Each group, they're going to read together, talk about this. Then when they're done with that, they're going to talk with the other group and they're going to come up with a consensus point to share with the class. So 1 point per table. And with this, the activity minus the reading of the Appropriations Act. One question was, before today's lesson, did you previously know what the federal government made an apology to Native American people hidden deep in Department of Appropriations Act of 2010? I didn't know, so I don't expect them to. But with that, they're either going to circle yes or no right here, and they're going to explain their answer in a few bullets, okay? And then again, another question, why do you think the apology was hidden in the Department of Defense Appropriations Act of 2010? That's a good question. It's a good question to debate. And then I want them to use your analytical skills to answer the question in the third box, meaning please explain your answer in a few bullet points. So again, it's almost like an analysis of why they believe reasons why it was hidden. What are the benefits? Why would it be hidden in Department of Defense Appropriations Act 2010 when no one can find it? Next question. Since the Thomas Indian School was New York State run, what reasons can you think of New York State not issuing an apology for the abuses against Native children at the school? Again, students are going to use analytical skills, in a sense, to almost like a close read, break it down, try to get an alternative meaning, the true meaning, try to figure out why New York State's never came out to apologize since it happened in New York State. And again, explain your answer in a few bullet points. Here we go. Portion 4. So this is getting into the Appropriations Act. Portion 4, apologize on behalf of the people of the United States to all Native people for many instances of violence, maltreatment, and neglect inflicted on Native peoples by citizens of the United States. Portion 5 expresses its regrets for the ramifications of former wrongs and its commitment to build on the positive relationships of the past and present to move toward a brighter future where all people of this land live reconciled as brothers and sisters and harmoniously stewards and protect this land together. So, the question based off this, and you should, also look at the Appropriations Act. What I attached for you. The question would be: do you think that the children who went through the Thomas Indian School experienced violence, maltreatment, and neglect? Okay, it's either yes or no. Obviously, most are going to say yes, and they're going to explain their reasoning in bullet form. But now this is the next question. Pretty interesting. Since the federal government admitted wrongs against the Native Americans, does a disclaimer, because there's a disclaimer at the end, disclaimer attached statement of nothing in this section authorizes or supports any claim against the United States or serves as a settlement of any claim against the United States have validity in civil litigation cases if there was acknowledgement of wrongdoing and damage can be proven in specific cases. So, since the federal government admitted they were wrong, and the wrong is that they committed against children in Indian boarding schools, are they liable? Are they still liable? Is there a statute of limitations if they are liable? Is that maybe a reason they could have hit it? I don't know. So anyway, it's either circle yes or no for your students, and additional resources may be necessary. And again, I want them to explain their answers. And then to the students, do you think New York State should give an official apology to the Native Americans? The ones who went through the Thomas Indian School. It's either yes or no, and explain your answer in a few bullet points. And finally, to the students, do you believe that New York State Social Studies Standards 11.4c should add the Thomas Indian School, located in Irvine, New York, and approximately 30 miles from Buffalo, to its mandatory taught curriculum when forced acculturation efforts, which currently only mention the Carlisle Indian School located in Pennsylvania? Do you think it should be added to the New York State standards? Either yes or no, and explain the answer. So, here's the Defense Appropriations Act. I'm going to show you here. H.R. 3326, Defense Appropriations Act, 2010, 111th Congress, 2009, 2010. Coming down. Going down. Here we go. Apology to Native American peoples of the United States. Section 8113. A. Acknowledgement of apology. The United States, acting through Congress, recognizes the special legal and political relationship Indian tribes have with the United States and the solemn covenant within the land we share. Commends and honors Native people for thousands of years that they have stewarded and protected the land. 3. Recognizes that there have been years of official deprivation, ill-conceived policies, and the breaking of covenants by the federal government regarding Indian tribes. Apologize on behalf of the people of the United States to all Native people for the many instances of violence, maltreatment, and neglect inflicted on Native peoples by citizens of the United States. Expresses regret for the ramifications of former wrongs and its commitment to build on the positive relationships of the past and present to move toward a brighter future where all people of this land live reconciled as brothers and sisters and harmoniously steward and protect this land together. Urges the President to acknowledge the wrongs of the United States against Indian tribes, and it in the history of the United States in order to bring healing to this land, and commends the state governments that have begun reconciliation efforts with recognized Indian tribes located in their boundaries, and encourages all state governments similarly to work toward reconciling relationships with Indian tribes within their boundaries. And here is the disclaimer. Authorizes or supports, or disclaimer, nothing in this section 1 authorizes or supports any claim against the United States or serves as a settlement of any claim against the United States. Well, I'm not sure if that's how civil law works, but it would be a good research project for your students, and to look more into this situation, into these facts. So, well, with that, those are the three sections with the sources attached, along with student activities. I hope this is helpful. If you are planning on doing a lesson on Thomas Indian School. Again, I did this because I knew nothing about Thomas Indian School. And after going through these sources and reading this book by Keith Birch, I had to do something. So, well, thank you, everybody. Go ahead and feel free to do anything you want with this. Please add to it. The only thing I ask is that you pass it on to colleagues so other teachers can utilize this and for their students' knowledge on Native Americans and the survivors, to honor the survivors that went through the Thomas Indian School. All right. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye now.